So today's presentation, The Digital Stylist, Finding the Look for Audiences by Pairing Content and Channels, will be presented by Jen Bullett. Jen is One North's Managing Director of Marketing. She provides marketing direction and strategy to promote key initiatives and thought leadership. She also works closely with the strategy, creative, and technology teams to develop and launch innovative interactive marketing solutions. With that, I'll turn the presentation over to Jen.
Thanks, Tanya. I really appreciate it, and thanks everyone for joining us today. So I hope that the next hour is fun. I will warn you in advance that you're going to maybe have to use your imagination and creativity a little bit, as the topic is slightly outside the box, but I think very applicable to what's going on in professional services organizations today in terms of how marketers are using content and channels and even context to really sort of provide valuable interactions with either potential clients or existing clients or other audiences that are really important to them. So with that, we'll just jump right into it. You know, in 2012, 2013, we spent a lot of time thinking about or talking to clients about just the mechanics of sort of producing and publishing content. And as a marketer myself, I sort of felt a little bit over the last couple of years that we were constantly just focused on producing more and more and more content. You almost feel like you're sort of living on a content farm, as we've got depicted here. And not surprisingly, you know, this idea of just constantly producing content, sort of, you know, the top issue that we hear all the time with our clients is, you know, I never feel like I can keep, you know, ahead of the content game. So last year we looked at, we took some inspiration from the world of merchandising to kind of say, hey, you know, maybe there's ways of creatively using the content that you already have and either displaying it in different ways to make it more compelling to different audiences or potentially packaging it up with other types of content, so that you're sort of not always feeling like, you know, you're running on a treadmill trying to keep up with the demand of developing content. So we did some blog posts and some presentations and also some webinars about this idea of content merchandising. You know, what are things that we can learn from the retail world that we can actually apply to firms? So that was sort of interesting and also a unique take on content. But I think since that, you know, the amount of content that has been created, that we're all creating, has just increased. And it's sort of interesting, this infographic sort of gives you a sense of the amount of content that's produced on a daily basis on the web. So, you know, 48 hours worth of YouTube video is created every minute of the day on YouTube. I mean, it's just sort of extraordinary. And in addition to that, as we all know, being in the marketing world, is that there's also just this proliferation of channels. You know, this is the percentage of B2B marketers who use various social media sites for distribution of content. And these are just the digital pieces of it, you know, from LinkedIn to Tumblr in certain circumstances. But that doesn't even take into account some of the traditional channels. And interestingly enough, just as a side note, we were looking at a RFP that came in not too long ago, and a client referred to websites as traditional marketing, and it's just so interesting to see how quickly the evolution happens of new channels, new technologies, and sort of how they fit in the mind of marketers. But in addition to all the digital channels, there's also all of the important traditional offline channels. So I think that complicates it. And I think, you know, finally, clients' expectations have changed, and partly it's changed because of their experiences maybe in other arenas, not just professional services, whether it's consulting or law firms, but, you know, their expectation is that as a brand, however you're communicating, they expect that all of the channels are integrated so that they have a very seamless experience. So this idea of omni-channel, where customers experience a brand, not a channel within the brand, and where retailers are really leveraging a single view of a customer and coordinate in strategic ways. I think that's sort of the expectation from, you know, so many clients these days is that we're just going to have it all figured out and sort of packaged up and delivered in the way that they like at the time that they need it, so that they can actually use it to make some, make some decisions. So, I kind of see it now as content plus channel plus context, and I thought this was kind of funny because, we talk so much about targeting, but it's very hard to target, I think, especially in professional services. You almost get to the point where you're targeting on a by client basis. So I thought this was kind of funny. It's like sort of who else should we be targeting? But I think the idea is that clients are looking for kind of like the head-to-toe look. They want you to sort of understand what their needs are, how they're comfortable communicating with you, and also understand sort of when they need that information from you, sort of have a holistic experience. So this is the portion of the presentation where you're going to need your imagination and creativity. So if you haven't had your coffee or afternoon soda, it's time to get that. And before I go into that, I should just say that there are some ways that technology are helping with this idea of sort of customizing the delivery of content to sort of target specific audiences. And you see things like geo-targeting within your phone or iPads or other types of technologies. So we're seeing this as well with websites that we're building, where you're able to sort of customize content based on the location of the user. But it's the idea of sort of like, being able to micro-target information based on the location. We're also seeing content targeting. This is an example on the telegraph.co.uk where the article on the page is actually about Cape Town, and not surprisingly, all the content sponsored on the right-hand side is also about holidays in South Africa. So there's ways of using personalization and rules to kind of ensure that you're creating the right content mix in context of what's on the page. There's also time targeting, which is, trying to understand when is the best time that your audience would actually be able to absorb the information that you're publishing. So being able to sort of set times to actually deliver, you could do testing around this to see when the best times are. And then the last one where you see more, this is more sort of in the advertising world, but retargeting, which is, I might have gone to a site, in this case I went to Talbot, but as I surf and navigate other sites on the web that have advertising properties, I'm able to, or the Talbot is able to sort of retarget the message to me, so it's sort of top of mind and hopefully remind me to come back to the site. So anyway, there's things that technology is doing to kind of make it, easier for us as marketers to make sure that we are delivering the right content through the right channels in the context of how the user or client is making decisions. I would say it's still sort of in its infancy, and there's a lot, of work left to go from a technology standpoint, but we still need to, as marketers, really think about who our audience is, what their consumption behaviors look like, and then plot our own sort of head-to-toe look based on that, which is sort of the inspiration for this event. And I will just sort of say as I move into the next slide, that you all are privy to sort of some of my horrible television habits, because I happen to watch a lot of really bad Bravo TV, including sort of Rachel Zoe Project, It's a Brad World. So just, I'm putting that out there now as a confession, but it was interesting to me as I started watching these shows and thinking about how stylists actually think about clients and actually create these looks, where they're meticulous about every single aspect of what they put on their clients or what their clients ultimately look like. And it made me think about this notion of, broadly trying to create this integrated, perfectly in sync content, basically, is what they're delivering to their clients. They're bringing them the product that ultimately helps them be sort of a better packaged brand. So I got some inspiration from that, and I think it's kind of an interesting concept. I also had the tough job of doing some very in-depth research about stylists and what they do. So I've spent quite a lot of time reading about stylists, and I've picked out a couple of things that I feel like have a very strong correlation to what we do as marketers. The first is, stylists really get to know their clients, and I think in a couple different ways. The first is they just happen to spend a lot of time with them. This is actually Lupita Nyong'o's stylist, who on the right-hand side, she won the Academy Award this year, and I hope I didn't just John Travolta her name, but her stylist has sort of rocketed to fame because of she's put Lupita on the map in terms of being a brand within Hollywood. But one of the things that stylists focus on is really understanding their clients, what they like, what they dislike, what suits them, what their body shape looks like. They spend a lot of time together. They sort of have an intimate connection because they're sort of in this together. So I thought that was really interesting. It helps them have a critical eye for what could be of interest for their clients. The next one is, stylists sort of take the time and hassle away for their clients. I mean, one of the things that you hear is that, these celebrities don't have time to do this. They go on these press junkets. They need someone to come up with all these looks for them. It's really important that they're always, looking great because they're in the, media's eye. So the fact that they bring all of these head-to-toe looks to their clients provides such a service for the client. And it's not that dissimilar. Now, again, you're going to have to use your imagination and creativity, but it's not that dissimilar to the busy people that we try to target as professional service marketers. They don't have the time. They don't have the bandwidth to be searching for nuggets of information that they need to actually make decisions on their job. So when we're able to package things up in a thoughtful and contextual way, it sort of takes the burden off of them. You can see I'm totally obsessed with Lupita at the moment, but the next is they push the boundaries, and I think this is interesting. I mean, we see this a lot in the agency world, but you see this a lot in other professional services, which is, as the expert in this area, sometimes you have the perspective to sort of say, in addition to the things that you're thinking about, I'd also advise you to be thinking about some other things that are going to be critical, down the road, or that you might not be considering right now. And it's the same for stylists. They sort of push the boundaries. They make people try things on that they wouldn't ultimately do, knowing that they understand how it's going to look and how it's going to photograph and ultimately could be beneficial to their clients. Know the trends and be the experts. I think this is really interesting, and I think one of the benefits that stylists offer, but also one of the benefits that professional services offer, which is, we're in our business, we have a very strong understanding of specific areas of expertise. And when we're able to communicate that in an actionable way to clients, it provides benefits to them because they're maybe looking at a broader or maybe tasked with broader responsibilities. This is interesting. This is actually a notebook from a stylist. She actually, when she goes to every show that she goes to, she takes, she draws all the different looks, sort of makes notes about who it might look good on, how it might work, what types of situations it could work in. So it's sort of this thoughtful methodology of really understanding and internalizing sort of key trends so that they can be the expert when it comes to the client, which is very much what our clients do. Sometimes it's what we try to do as well, to sort of internalize it and reinterpret it and bring fresh ideas based on what we're seeing. And finally, really customizing and tailoring the look to specific clients. This is actually, I was on the Fashion Institute of Technology website, and they had sort of course descriptions, and there was a course description for red carpet looks or something like that, and they were talking about all the things that you needed to be able to do, like pinning and taping and keeping plunging necklines in place, God forbid something happens there. So they were sort of talking about how important it is that no matter what you get off the rack, that you customize it for each individual client, or for, we might think of it more sort of like groups or segments of clients. And of interest is the fact that stylists, basically tailor 85% of red carpet looks. And I think that in order to be effective, we also have to tailor and customize the content, the marketing that we're delivering to clients. And I guess the last point before we sort of dive into, I'm sure at this point you're thinking, that's great. Thanks for all these great pictures of celebrities, but how does this relate to me? I think that the stylists are also in the relationship business, which is what professional services businesses are, the relationship-based businesses, whereby you get more business from referrals, your reputation is critical, you hope to have long-lasting relationships with clients where you're helping to serve them over time. There are breakups sometimes in them, but a lot of times what happens is, you may change, somebody may change agency or consulting firm or law firm, but the idea is that, based on your work, there might be an opportunity to either come back, or there's also an opportunity for you to sort of keep clients within the loyalty loop and hopefully continue to serve them over time. So I thought that was an interesting correlation between law firms, professional services organizations, and stylists. Okay, so let's put this into practice. So I'm going to just, I took a couple of key takeaways from stylists, and I decided that it would be kind of fun to actually go out and get to know different types of audiences and then put together, sort of compile different looks for them based on sort of their unique needs. So first I took the step of getting to know some clients. In this case, I looked at different types of clients. I looked at the options that could be used for those specific clients, and then created what stylists called a look board, which is sort of an inspiration board for each of the clients, which sort of helps guide decisions that are made from a content and delivery standpoint. The people that I talked to, I actually went and spent time with them, all have the capacity in their jobs to hire or work with law firms, consulting firms, other professional service organizations. So they have a very broad understanding. They're also critically involved with the growth of the business. They work across groups, and they're very much sort of influential in their organizations. So the three roles that I talked to are VP of Business Development, this person being in charge of sort of mergers and acquisitions. The second was the VP of HR and Talent Management, and then the last one was VP of Product Development. So within sort of understanding the clients, there were some specific things I was really interested in learning. The first is, what are their motivations? What does their environment look like? How do they make up their minds? What triggers behavior? I really was trying to understand, the important, maybe more emotional factors of their job, and some of the things that could be useful to them from a content, from a delivery standpoint, from a context of understanding the types of things that they're struggling with right now. So I'm just going to go through and give you guys a little snapshot into each of these people, talk about sort of the options that could be used for them, and then walk you through some of the look boards that we come up with. The first is William. He's the VP of Business Development. He is in charge of scoping out, understanding mergers and acquisitions for his business. He works for a private equity company, and he's the type of person that loves to make deals. He is very motivated by growth of the business, that he gets compensated based on that. He's also, looking to, in the future, be a CEO or general manager. So he's constantly thinking about how, deals that he makes help him position himself with his board, but also, help position him in terms of maybe taking over one of the businesses that's acquired so that he can be a CEO or general manager. The environment within which he works is business. There's no drama. It's not, it's very focused on the bottom line. It's very focused on growth and opportunity. He specifically is, more of a fact-based decision maker. He wants the numbers. He wants to crunch them himself. Very much in an environment where any decision that's being made is a business case driven, so he spends a lot of his time evaluating market trends, market data, competitive situation, understanding sort of the health of businesses that he is recommending either acquire or merge with. And he is very structured and prescriptive about how he makes decisions and how he acts. He has a very, and as I said, he has a very regimented approach to it. He's independent, but he definitely manages up because of his aspirations to be CEO, general manager one day. He's very concerned about how, things will likely benefit him. And as I said before, he's very sort of analytical. He likes to get insights from analysts and consultants that might be sort of independent in the industry. And then finally, things that are sort of trigger points for him. Unsuccessful deals. I mean, deals fall through for him all the time, not because of anything that he did, but it's just sort of the nature of mergers and acquisitions. Organizational shifts, change in leadership, change in direction, potentially new opportunities, competitive threat could be something. And he struggled a little bit with skills on his team. There could be people who maybe aren't as analytical as he is, so he feels like there could be some help that he could get from the outside in those areas. So just some key things that he talked about and sort of how he communicates are, he does use Twitter. He uses it basically to listen to see what's going on in the market, email, phone, laptop, articles, reports, infographics, and he's sort of really into, following influencers in the market. So, if I was a stylist, I might, knowing all these things about him and knowing sort of the looks that he needs to do his job well, I might go out there and look at all of my options in terms of things that I could provide him. So from an information standpoint, merger and acquisition strategies and news, sort of best practices around things that he should be thinking about. Facts, survey, results, market size, infographics, anything that starts with research and has a strong analytical bent to it. I think the other thing is that one of the struggles that he has seen is sort of when companies are acquired, the toughest part is actually the integration, and his team is actually in charge of not only the acquisition but then the ultimately rolling the business into the company. So understanding sort of the integrations, examples, learnings for how he can actually make that a smoother process. I think from a delivery standpoint, he wants to get to know the analysts and consultants in the business. He kind of wants, breaking news, inside scoop. He would like sort of information-rich white papers delivered potentially via Twitter, website, email. He works, pretty 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. He travels maybe 15% of the time, which means that, his iPhone or work computer is probably the device he's using the most. So this kind of like all the options that I need to be thinking about when I'm putting together a plan for him or someone like him. So based on that, we can go out on the web and pull together sort of a look board of things that would actually suit him. This is a really great example of content and the delivery of that content that would suit him to a T. It's Allen and Overy's M&A Index. And within that, it is just chock full of facts, infographics, things that he absolutely would eat up. And I also liked the fact that within their Twitter feed, they led with facts, percentages, and that's the type of thing that he absolutely will gravitate towards. It may also make sense for my organization to start following the people that he follows or the consultants in that space because he's looking to them to give him insight. He values their opinion. He hires them sometimes to provide some additional insight. So sort of getting to understand them, understanding the influence that they play on him is important. And then also sort of following some of the things that he's also reading. So, quarterly, this is Nonprofit Quarterly. His business is actually in the nonprofit world. but sort of understanding the key trends, things that he's reading, potentially thinking about advertising, sponsorship, content, opportunities within that sector. So this is, kind of an interesting way of compiling the types of things that really would be, key for reaching him. The next person is VP of HR. Her name's Jane. She's new to an organization, and she's basically come in to be an agent of change. She is a doer and a driver. She's very results-oriented. She's eager to be more involved with strategy and innovation, but because she's basically transforming everything from scratch, she's very much in the details of the tactical issues of her job. She doesn't really want to be there, so she very much would value outside counsel, whether it's consulting or also from a firm. She works very closely with their law firm around sort of some of the basics that an HR and talent development group needs. Her environment is historically slow-moving. It's on the verge of transformation, but it's not quite there yet. There's lots of layers. There's lots of bureaucracy in making decisions. Her decision-making, she's very much sort of focused on consensus and collaboration. She gains buy-in before she actually suggests something. She always starts with tapping into her network. She's very well-known within the market that she exists, and she has a great network, so she always starts there when she's looking for consultants, when she's looking for information, when she's looking for potential firms, when she's looking for best practices. She's not going to read a ton of information, but she will definitely scan content specifically that's been served up from her network. And I think, for her, sort of old procedures, ineffective, anything that's sort of out of date or things that kind of drive her crazy and maybe trigger her to take some action. Again, her team has a little bit of team skill gap, but she's really focused on sort of transformation. For her, she's much more an in-person kind of individual, and she prefers the phone. She obviously has a laptop. She's on LinkedIn almost all day long. It's sort of a constant in the background of her computer. She does a lot of sort of, hey, can I meet you for a quick coffee? I have some questions to ask you about specific things. As I said before, she'll tap her network and use referrals from that. And as I said before, she's not going to dig into a 20-page white paper. So, for her, I think some of the key things that she's struggling with is change management strategies. She would be interested in experience brought to her from other similar situations. She respects certain types of publication. This is the a board that she looks at that has some, executive board information, and so she definitely has certain sources in her head that have brand cachet. She would love someone to come in and just give her updated policies and procedures so she doesn't have to start them from scratch. She receives a lot of the content from her network, so either via email, phone calls, or on LinkedIn. She will be a part of lots of different groups on LinkedIn. Short, sweet, scannable content, and thoughtful, well-curated content. So if you were to put together an email of sort of like top things talent managers need to be thinking about in 2014, if it was, paragraph for each of the topics with sort of like the key highlights, she would definitely look at that. She's 8 to 5, but she works in the evening. She doesn't travel, and I would say her laptop and her work phone are probably her most used tools. So for her, a couple of looks that are really interesting. The first is, there's several LinkedIn groups on LinkedIn. So this is the HR group, but there's certain influencers within those groups that she would follow. She would also potentially ask questions of. It's a very open type of career so that people feel very open about sharing information. And although some LinkedIn groups, you go into and you kind of, you don't see as much value in them, there are certain ones in here where you have very senior level HR individuals who are providing information. So being part of those conversations is important. The thing that I liked about this Deloitte Human Capital Trends, and I actually have another example in the past, is that it first of all uses a couple different things which I think are interesting. One is, obviously it provides top-level trends of within sort of the human capital space, which she would find interesting. It has all the key trends in the carousel at the top of the page, and so she can quickly sort of navigate through those to see the highlights. But it also has some educational tools that she could share with her team. One of the things that she's struggling with is sort of trying to make sure that her team is up to snuff. So they have webinars and other longer form content that I'm sure she would pass off to her team. The thing that I like about this is the executive board, again, is that they put out a global workforce insight quarterly. And the neat thing about that is not only can you download the report, but one of their executives actually provides you with like a 2 to 3 minute highlight of the most important information within that report, which is something she would love because she's not going to read the whole content. And the last one I thought was really interesting, which is a city-sponsored section of this is SlideShare, where they basically have put together a professional women's network, which it has sort of like key topics for women in business. And this is the type of thing that she could, if somebody in her network said, hey, you should look at this presentation around X, Y, and Z, she would absolutely go there, and she might actually start following this, this network because it's so suited to the things she's interested in. So that's kind of her look. And then the final one is Matt, VP of Product, Matt Dreamer. So he is a big ideas guy. He is, he basically works for a startup. His big goal in life is to go through an IPO. He loves creating products. He loves imagining something better. He loves developing ideas. He's also in the details, though, of packaging and selling his products, which involves, in many times sort of working with law firms as it relates to contracts and contract development. He's also very much involved with patent law as it relates to products that he's creating or new technologies. His environment is dynamic, fast-paced, creative, but very well organized. It's a high-growth environment. Decision-making within the organization is very fluid. Things move very quickly. He doesn't really need a lot of buy-in because he's pretty senior within the organization. But one thing to know about him is that because he is in the product development space, he definitely has an aesthetic eye. So if you're communicating with him, it really needs to sort of have the same care in terms of the aesthetic look and feel as he would put into his product. He also is, very much sees himself as a thought leader within the industry. So following him and understanding him is very important. Things that are, triggers for him are sort of competitive threat. He's always concerned about, is someone going to come out with something faster? Is there's going to be a new innovation that I didn't create? And I think also sort of organizational change, because the business is growing so quickly, it's, lots and lots of change. So for him, he basically is on his iPad. I mean, he doesn't go anywhere without it. Also, he uses his laptop, but just at work, iPhone. He does publish on Twitter, so he, again, sort of, fancies himself a thought leader. He's somewhat involved with LinkedIn and does like face-to-face meetings. He likes things like events or trade shows. He likes to speak at trade shows. So he's definitely an in-person type of individual. So for him, I think, things he struggles with are product life cycle strategies. What does the IP strategy look like for a product over time? Are there things that he should be thinking about? Are there areas of risk that he should be thinking about? Market, client, industry trends. I mean, he's kind of always looking for the next big thing or wants to be the next big thing. He's definitely a big ideas person, so he would watch stuff like the TED Talks. The things that he reads are the Harvard Business Review, so sort of getting published within that would be one way that he would encounter your organization. As I said before, well-designed sort of long-form trends article would be really interesting for him. He travels a lot, so because he basically brings the iPad with him, he would he would read an ebook if you had it. He's either full speed or turned off. I mean, he's basically on most of the time, except for when he doesn't sleep. And he works basically all the time, travels a ton. iPad is his primary device. So this kind of gives you a snapshot of like all the options that you can be thinking about. So a couple of things that are interesting here are strategy and business. This is a great, he would absolutely love this article, Global Innovation 1000, Navigating the Digital Future. The other thing I liked about this for him is that it's very visual, so it has these great infographics that you can interact with. Again, he has this aesthetic eye, so if you're publishing content for him around whether it's IP strategies or whether it is product life cycle information, packaging it up in a really aesthetic way is great. I also liked this big data and creative destruction of today's business models. I think it's the type of thing that he would read. It's also designed like a magazine, and the online version of it actually has an ebook that you could download, so he could sort of put it on his iPad and use it when he's traveling. And then things that he would either comment on, retweet, read, e-consultancy, Seth Godin, Wired, these are the types of things that he's just going to be really involved with and he's going to be following. He's also going to be tweeting a lot as well, so he's very active in the space. So in my mind, this kind of gives you a good sense of, this type of person, what is the type of content, the type of channel, the type of context that they are looking for. And obviously, these are people within my network that I chose because I thought that they were interesting, provided interesting perspectives. They're all very different. They all make decisions in very different ways. I think that you would probably, as you start talking to clients, see some real groupings of people who are, big ideas people who are very factual, people who are very results-oriented, and it might change the way that you present or the type of content that you deliver to them. So just a couple real-world examples that, I don't know if they went through the process of creating lookboards, but I think that they did a really good job of, providing that omni-channel approach to content. This is PwC focused on CEOs. Every year they come out with sort of CEO survey, which they talk about sort of the key business drivers, key trends that are important for CEOs. The thing that I think that's really interesting about this is that, if I was a CEO, I might find the content, I might interact with this piece of content or this interaction with PwC in the following way. I might be scanning Twitter and I'm actually following an influencer named Andrew Gill. He's retweeted PwC's latest global CEO survey. It also, at the same time, happens to have been covered in the Harvard Business Review. It takes me to the PwC site, which has a really great interactive tool that allows you to sort of dig in and see some of the details around the key drivers, the key trends for CEOs to be cautious of or at least knowledgeable about. Also accompanied by content by the CEO of PwC, both in SlideShare and also YouTube format, which might lead me actually to the CEO's LinkedIn page. He's actually, one of the thought leaders on LinkedIn, so he has quite a lot of content. It's actually, he has a great profile on LinkedIn, but he has quite a lot of content there. And then, at some point, if I sort of, I went through all this process and, then I went on and did something else and came back. If I did a search for it, it actually takes me to this PwC CEO survey benchmarking capability, which allows you to actually go in and benchmark yourself against your peers, and actually it provides a custom report for you. And oh, by the way, it'll send it to you if you give it, if you give them your email address. So it's actually a really nice value-driven lead generation tool. So I like that as a really good example. And just to highlight some of the digital pieces of it, I mean, they used, speaking of omni-channels, they used quite a few different touch points from Twitter to YouTube, SlideShare, LinkedIn, search results, in-depth sort of lead generation, customized reports and their website. So it's very well structured, I think, very well balanced. They thought about the different things that somebody might be using to actually access this content. The next is Perkins & Will, which is an architectural firm. They have a very strong point of view as it relates to sustainable buildings, and they actually have an expert. She's a PhD in this area. Her name is Ajla. And this one I think is really unique because I think I've never seen anything like this, and I think it's such a cool way of using marrying trade shows and social. But so basically they had Ajla at one of their trade shows, a national convention, and they had a hashtag where she's an expert in sustainable facades. She's written books on it. She's knowledgeable on the subject. So you could actually, tweet her questions, and she would actually be there to respond. She also was going to be at the convention, so she was a draw to their booth, which I thought was really interesting. Her LinkedIn page is, I don't know, I think it's probably the best LinkedIn page I've ever seen. She has so much content on there. I mean, there's no doubt after you go to her LinkedIn page that she's absolutely the expert in this area, which leads you to some online articles that she has written, and also put together sort of some key building supplies that are important for if you're interested in sustainability. And then, if you were to go to their site, you actually would be able to find very specific articles about sustainability and see examples of their work where they actually are showcasing some of the best practices. So I thought this was a really interesting case study. I think the interaction with social media and events is really pretty interesting. So in this one, they use a lot of the same tools, but maybe in different ways. So hashtags, LinkedIn, articles, SlideShare, blogs, and also their website. So this is a new one, and I actually will, if anyone's interested in the link to this Global Human Capital Trends, I can send it to you afterwards. I have put my email address at the front, but it is possibly one of the best examples of, I think, of displaying a thought leadership report. It's really interesting. It's really well designed, and the total experience is really well thought out. But if I'm a HR talent person, I might be on my LinkedIn page seeing what my network's talking about. I might actually make it into this article where they sort of talk about the new Deloitte Global Human Capital Trends. I might then also see it on their LinkedIn page. And if I'm signed up for their news alerts, I also get a link to their Global Human Capital Trends article where I can go specifically to that site. I can also go to one of their webcasts around some of the similar topics. The report is on their site. It's a truly interactive experience. It does a great job of not only delivering the content, but also introducing you to the experts within that area. They have put together a 2 to 3 minute video that kind of highlights the key takeaways. And of course, you can also download the article, the full article, if you're interested in reading it. So, they use sort of well thought out omni-channel approach to delivering the content. So just final thoughts. I think, bringing it back to sort of the stylist piece. The first is, understanding your audience and also understanding where they are in their decision-making process so you can have sort of better context. So, we use this a lot, the relationship cycle, when we're talking to clients within the professional service organizations in terms of understanding, where someone is in their decision, what types of information they might need to sort of move to the next stage within the cycle, and the importance of sort of the loyalty end of it, where you're sort of not having to re-win the business every time. So I think this helps set context for, how they're making decisions. I think it's also helpful just as a exercise is to sort of go through and map out who your audience is. I mean, it may be pretty broad. It could be sort of, clients, prospective clients, alumni, recruits, I mean, however you want to do it, or you could get down into more granular detail around, general counsel with interest in China, maybe map out like, their blog, they might blogs, they might be going to events, they might be looking for like the latest thoughts on certain things. They want sort of like fast alerts maybe, they're entering China top issues. So you can kind of start mapping out the things that are most interesting to that audience. And then you can kind of look at what your options are. What do you have? What do you need? What kind of content you already have? What you're not going to need because, like they'll never read a white paper, so don't even, bother writing it. You might do the same thing with channels. You might say to yourself, there's no way they're ever going to go on Flickr, so why, I would never use that. Might change when you're talking about recruits. That might be something that's actually interesting to them. So, mapping out what you have, what your options are, and then kind of putting it together in a very holistic campaign. So, maybe mapping out the different areas of the relationship and aligning your content and also delivery within those based on who you're targeting. So it just helps you have a bit more of a cohesive view of, the efforts that you're putting into it. And really, with the goal of creating a truly head-to-toe campaign or effort. So in case you're not convinced by my correlation between professional services marketing and stylists, let me just bring you a couple final examples that hopefully will persuade you. Just as a, Carrie Underwood before she met her stylist, Carrie Underwood after she met her stylist, Angelina Jolie, this might be my favorite actually. Before and now you can see she's got a great head-to-toe look. And the final one, that hair is just amazing, Sarah Jessica Parker and Sarah Jessica Parker now. So I think, the attention to detail and the thoughtful approach to every single element of a head-to-toe look, thinking about content and channels and context can actually have a very powerful integrated approach. So with that, I thank you very much for your time. And I think we'll just put ourselves on mute for a second and see if there's any questions.
Yep, and just a reminder, if you want to submit a question, you can use the question function located in your GoToMeeting control panel at the right side of your screen. Okay, so our first question is, can you recommend a source of good data for time targeting?
So I have read a few studies around time targeting as it relates to B2B marketing. I don't have those off the top of my head, but I can definitely find it, so we're happy to follow up with you after I have some time to go back and find those articles. The other thing, too, is testing. We're actually in the process of doing some social media, sort of testing ourselves around delivery and types of content to see, really what has the most impact. So I think that can also be beneficial for your own specific business needs. But there definitely are, I have seen some specific business-to-business guidelines around when the best time is to use different types of channels. So I'll follow up with you directly.
Okay, we actually got one last-minute one, which is, when I think style, I think visuals. Any recommendation on social data reporting services that do a great job with visuals?
We use Sprout Social, and I don't know if this is what you're getting to, and they do a pretty good job. I think we probably haven't done a great job of sort of looking at the specific audiences that we're targeting. But that's one that we've used that sort of, helped us visualize some of the key trends that we're seeing. But I'm happy again to do a little research on that and follow up with you on some other ones that I find or that I've seen out there. That might be helpful as well.
Okay, so that's all the questions that came in. If you have any questions after the webinar, feel free to reach out to Jen or myself, and we'll be sending the presentation and the recording shortly after the webinar. Thank you everyone for joining, and have a great day.